Hill of the United States of America, if you can please join the podium. Absolutely, yes. Thank you, sir. Mr. Professor Zijad Becirovic, da li biste mogli da se priključite? I gospodin Zoran Tadic, predsjednik Neofytona. So we are continuing our work. Now we have a roundtable on political cooperation in the region. And that's not an easy topic, is it? The problem of small differences is the typical kind of problem where family hatred, you know. Anyway. So we're going to identify the current state of political cooperation here in the Western Balkans and see what are the strategies to improve the situation naturally towards our national goals and regional goals of integrating into the European Union. Gentlemen, if you allow me, I would kindly ask Mrs. Jagoda Lazarevic to open the discussion on this as the acting minister. Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Jagoda, molim vas, izvolite.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, I agree that it's quite a challenging topic since it's talking about a region, actually. I believe that we can agree that deep-rooted tensions and regional tensions continue to inhibit actually the regional cooperation in the Western Balkans and also with the EU. But however, I personally believe that, of course, prerequisite is with the support of the EU and equally with the United States, we could, or better say, we should actually prioritize actually the process actually of bringing the rhetorics to the ground that we should actually focus on really cooperating. It's something that will actually enhance the cooperation, and in the same time it will enhance the regional integration in the first place, and in the same time it will stabilize our common path to the EU. So we, as a Serbia, we are, with all the legacy of the past, with all the period that we still very much recall, especially my generation, that remembering the 90s and remembering the year 2000 and even later, we are really trying actually to open the door to all in the region. And it is hard. But I do believe that it is possible because we have the examples from the past on European soil. I'm talking about the period after 45, actually, and examples of Germany and France. And not only actually putting those two countries together, cooperating, but actually making the whole architecture of Europe actually based on that premises. And more recent actual example, something that we were witnessing yesterday, during the visit of the President of Hungary to Serbia, how we managed, the Serbia and the Hungary actually, to overcome something that was kind of a burden from the past actually, and to create really long-standing, very deep ties in different areas. So right now when we talk about really very enhanced cooperation, friendly relations, we very often say, yes, our neighbor in the north. And imagine, I mean, something that, as I mentioned yesterday, yesterday, but just, you know, that you have the scene, that they have the two presidents actually honoring, commemorating actually the victims of the two sides yesterday actually, and then we move on. We remember, we honor, we commemorate, however, we have the strength, and we are moving forward. So this is actually the idea about how the issues from the past should be tackled with all the stakeholders, all the parties in the Western Balkans.
And I understand from the statements made by the minister, Mr. Marko Đurić, that this is actually the mandate which he has received. This is what he said in an interview, that in the mandate which he received from the government and the president, his job is actually not to create enemies, on the contrary, to create friendships and to mend relationships. And so he expressly said it in an interview of July. And that sounded so good to hear, you know. Yeah.
Yes, he has been in post of the minister for a bit more than 5 months now, and if we will look at the trips and the number of countries he visited so far, and talking about the region, talking about the EU, going across the Atlantic. So he has been very active and trying to be really consistent what he actually promised at the very beginning, even in that interview, which was at the very early stage of his actually ministerial post. So it's not only about MFA, it's not only about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's, if we look at architecture, it has to go all the way to the political leadership and transmit it to the bottom. Actually, there is no point that we try to do something unless we see the people actually. People, Serbian people, people living in this country, people in the region actually understanding why are we making some moves, and that's in the best interest actually of all, in order that we could and we should move forward. So I would just like to tackle one thing that, again, referring to the early examples actually after the end of the Second World War actually, and how you would when you have the people actually that they have, you know, standard of living actually adequate. So you don't have to think about, you know, since you're not poor, and you could actually then think about your life, and actually you don't have even time to think about the politics and about things that are actually for a long time were present in every single household in the Western Balkans. So it is really something that bring the prosperity, bring the economic growth to every single economy, in order to make the life of the people actually better. And then it will not solve all the issue, but to a large extent actually it will help mutual life, cohabitation actually function better. So from that perspective, what we are trying to do, apart from having really the direct contacts and direct dialogue to all our partners in the neighborhood, at the same time to push hard towards projects that would really be, serving the purpose actually of bringing the people together, but in the same time bringing something valuable to the economy. So no wonder that we are really pushing hard to have regional major projects connecting Belgrade and Sarajevo, reconstruction of the railways, Belgrade-Var, having this access, Budapest going all the way to Athens, connecting with all the neighbors actually. Why? Because it will not only bring people together. It's not about having the railway and having the trains. It's about moving the goods faster, opening the new jobs, bringing new investments. Every single result of Serbian economy, and at the very beginning of today's forum, other speakers actually mentioned about the results, including the Minister Momiric, that we did an amazing job so far. But however, everything good that we did, it will be somehow distributed to the region. We cannot just keep it selfishly for ourselves. It will be something that everybody can benefit if they're aware and if they try actually to be a part of that. So I see perspective. I believe in the future of the Western Balkans, and I see that we, all the economists of the region, can do something really concrete in order to become, at a certain point of time, actually, the part of the Europe where we really belong. But we don't want, from the perspective of Serbia, and I'm very much sure that all the other partners in the region share the same opinion. We don't want to be considered as, like having the poor cousins sitting at the very end of the table during the Sunday lunch. We want to do something concrete, build up the resilience of our economies, have the infrastructure, having something like a dowry. Once we enter into the EU, we will have something that we bring with us, and so we will be not considered as just outsiders at the outskirts, some poor people coming from the Western Balkans. On the contrary.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ambassador Hill, would you like to make an introductory statement, please, sir?
Sure, but
about the relations in the region and about Kosovo, where we stand at the moment, and yes.
Okay, I'll be happy to make some introductory comments. First of all, thank you very much for having me on this panel.
Courtesy of Mr. Tsomokos, who is the best friend of Serbia, who has organized 24 conferences in a sequence of this kind and many other conferences, and did so much good for Serbia. Thank you, sir, very much. This is his contribution.
Okay, yes. Thank you. I feel I'm at a disadvantage because everything that's just been said is something I wholeheartedly believe in. So at the risk of kind of repeating what was just said, I too believe in this region of Europe. I too believe that it's got a much better future ahead than it did a past behind, but I also believe that we need to learn from the past, respect history especially, and see where we can go from here. I think what we all need to accept is that the creation of this European Union, which and its enlargement, I mean, this is not an easy process, but I think if one looks through the history of Europe, you will be hard-pressed to find as noble a cause in peacetime as you see in the European Union. It is truly extraordinary. It was, after all, founded in a way to make war obsolete in Western Europe. And it has. And the way when you're founded for the purpose of preventing something, that doesn't mean that you should therefore make everything easy to do. And in fact, I think there's a lot of frustration with the processes, which is understandable. People who thought they were joining a European civilization feel they're joining a bureaucracy, and so anytime you have bureaucracy, you have frustration. But I think it is utterly one of the best things we've seen in history, and I think rather than build monuments to its problems or its inefficiencies, one should start thinking about monuments to its achievements, which truly are extraordinary. I know that when you look at opinion surveys in Serbia, and not just in Serbia, and some of the other candidate countries, some of these surveys reflect a lot of frustration. It's a pretty common refrain to hear people from Serbia say, we've been waiting 17 years. And so people might think they have to look at other models for the future. In fact, this is kind of it, and this European Union is what needs to succeed. And I think it's very fair of the European Union to say, look, countries of the Western Balkans, we love you all, but we don't love all your problems. And we don't want you to bring problems into the European Union. We would like those solved before you come into the European Union. Obviously, life isn't so simple, because some of those problems will be better solved once you're in the European Union, no question. But if you're a member of the European Union, you have a right to expect some real efforts to try to address them, so that the glide path is very much positive, and that you can believe that these countries will make a really good faith effort to deal with these problems. Now, what problems are we talking about? In the case of the Western Balkans, it's largely identity problems. People may dismiss that as not important. Identity is very important throughout the world. I mean, I think the whole idea of globalization the brakes were put on that because of people's sense of losing identity. And to this day, if you look at the migration issue in Western Europe, it's largely an identity question. What does it mean to be French? What does it mean to be Dutch? I mean, these are all identity issues. And so they play out differently in different countries. And clearly in the Balkans, they play out through an additional lens, a lens of history. Germany and France have been able to move on from some of the most difficult history imaginable. But these problems do need to be honestly dealt with. I think what is, and here I'm echoing the set of last comments, which was, I think you need to try to identify them, but as you try to deal with, say, bilateral problems, not all can be solved bilaterally, you have to think to yourself, should we try to compartmentalize problems of an unfortunate past with problems of a fortuitous future? So you have to start trying to put some of these things into different binning boxes so that you can deal with them. I think that is the best way to deal with Croatian-Serbian issues, is to identify things that come from the past, but then identify things that very definitely will be essential to both countries' European futures. Of course, one is in the European Union, but being in the European Union should not be confused with being in the end of history. There will be other problems that people need to deal with. So I think that basic concept of trying to do some compartmentalization is important. And this is a word where, as a diplomat, I don't use it that often, but that word is trust. And, and people often roll their eyes at that. I remember I was asked once about trust, and I said, well, let me paraphrase Tina Turner here, that great American political scientist, in saying, what's trust got to do with it? Because ultimately, it's not about trust. I mean, you should be able to have verification. But actually, trust is a factor, and it's especially a factor in countries that have had, deep historical divisions. And it needs to be, there has to be some element of trust in it. And that's where I think outside mediators can help in that regard. There also, I think in any of these things, tone is very important. And what tone is about is, let's say you have a difference on problem X. You don't want to turn problem X into this broad array of issues like, that's what they always say to us. That's always their position. And
that's who they are.
That's who they are. And so you get into this issue where tone, you generalize about your negotiating interlocutor, and in the generalization, you make it more difficult to come back to the specifics. So I guess that is also something that needs to be done, and people just need to refrain from doing certain things. We see this in the Middle East all the time, but it's also been in the Balkans where let's say you're a mediator and you've got some tenuous agreement, it's kind of hanging by a thread, there'll be a lot of, to introduce another concept, buyer's remorse, where someone has reluctantly agreed to it, but then they go, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, they reluctantly have agreed to this issue, but they're not really sure, and then the next day their negotiating partner says something bad about them, and then that kind of
explodes.
The whole thing is over. So, or over for the time being. So, tone, trust, these issues I think very important. But ultimately, I think there needs to be a really better understanding that, you can call the EU whatever name you want to call it. You can complain about bureaucracy. You can complain about Western Europe telling places east, being arrogant about countries that are to the east of it. But ultimately, it's the place you want to be, and everyone knows that. And I think it requires people who can stay on track, don't get Don't get distracted by comments, by factors that are taking you off the track, but stay on it. And I think ultimately, I don't know how many years it'll be. I don't know if it's going to be 2028 or 2030. I don't really care at this point. What I care about is that the flow of history in this part of the world will lead these countries to being in the same member state status as the European Union. And, you know, I don't think people are going to be saying someday, well, he was in 2 years before we were. You know, most people don't remember that stuff. I mean, most people don't remember the, you know, the enlargement process. When did Poland enter? When did Romania enter? It really, it's not what's important. What's important is to go forward, figure out what you have to do, make sure you don't create more problems, and by the way, try to work on reducing problems and sort of making sure the land is ready to receive you know, the good things that will come with it. And I think Serbia is doing that right now. I think Serbia is, I've never seen a country so busy on its diplomacy. And it's really nice to see diplomacy. Serbia. I've never, you know, it's nice to see diplomacy, which, you know, a lot of people roll their eyes about. You know, I mean, try telling someone in my country, well, I'm a diplomat. They look at you like you're crazy or something. But this is, I think this country is really understands the role of diplomacy in calming things down and reducing the level of abstraction, dealing with problems, avoiding responding to provocative comments, and going forward. And I really think there's enough, there are enough data points now to draw a line that will get this country in the direction it needs to go.
Thank you, sir. With these truly words of inspiration, and we're now having the beautiful opportunity of listening to one of the most experienced senior diplomats of the United States, which that's how I consider you, sir. Really, the aristocracy of American diplomacy. When you said it doesn't really matter, will it be in 28, 30, 31, but I believe that you will end up in the European Union. Do you think that the prevailing force which has brought this, which you believe is directing us in this direction, is the war in Ukraine? Do you think that that is the prevailing force? That without that event, we would not be on that track, you know, so determinedly as you believe we are?
I understand how the war in Ukraine is setting certain deadlines and setting a sense of when certain countries need to get in and what is the order of them getting in. And so I think that's correct. I don't think that is the total legacy of the war in Ukraine. I think it will be discussed 200 years from now. People will be talking about that war and which countries did what. There will be some effort to look at, you know, who understood this as a threat to freedom. I mean, it's a threat to civilization. And again, I always make a habit of, you know, here I'm American in Serbia. I don't like to talk about third countries, but what Russia has done to their neighbors will live in infamy. It will be talked about for years, and it will be very difficult for Russians to explain that, because there's simply no explanation that can explain this mass murdering of people going on in Ukraine. I think the war will really be remembered in the context of, were right-minded countries able to come together to oppose it? Did we value our civilization in opposing it? I mean, this is just outrageous stuff. I mean, you really have to go back to World War II to find some
and now
of the
we have North
nations.
Koreans participating. I mean,
yes, I've been there several times. I negotiated with the North Koreans over their nuclear plans. I never thought I would live to see the day where a country like Russia hires North Koreans as mercenary troops. It's simply astounding to me. And I hope, in being astounding to me, I hope it's astounding to everyone else. There's absolutely no moral foundation for any of that kind of thing.
And now I will again take the opportunity just to ask you, sir, one more question. Last year, I have asked you at one of the conferences, the Ohrid agreement, or the agreement on normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo, is agreed upon and binding as an oral agreement. This is what you confirmed last year. It's an oral agreement.
In the sense
yes.
that there were no signatures.
Under the Vienna Convention on International Agreements.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that agreement, is that the legally binding agreement that is expected of Serbia?
Yes, I think an oral agreement where the parties agree, in this case, the facilitator agrees that they've agreed. Absolutely. I mean, this is what we did in...
I mean, because there was so much talk about the legally binding agreement, that is, we do not have to recognize Kosovo, but we have to enter into a legally binding agreement. This was the mantra that was coming from the European Union and the United States.
Well,
so you consider this to be that legally binding agreement,
look,
and there is no further expectations in this respect?
We were in negotiations with the North Koreans for several years. It was called the Six-Party Talks. You had the U.S., you had South Korea, you had Russia, China, Japan, North Korea. And every agreement we made, it would be written down, but no one would sign it. It was a question of, did you agree to it? And everyone agreed to it. And it was on that basis that we blew up the cooling tower and froze the nuclear program for a number of years. So yeah, that's a normal thing in diplomacy. What you try to do with these agreements, of course, is use them as momentum to get to another agreement. And diplomatic agreements often being like computer games, that as you get through a level and you go, wow, that was hard, and then the next level is even harder. So, you do have that kind of issue going on. But yeah, there's no problem with that. But I think what has happened is they got into this issue of sequencing, who jumps first and things like that. Those can be tough issues. And we used to do that, the North Koreans, they never wanted to do anything so you'd have to, try to get everyone in a pressure cooker and get everyone to agree on when you're going to do these things. So sequencing is also pretty tough. This is not an easy...
We are in the issue of sequencing, actually. Serbia insists
These are not easy issues. If they're easy, believe me, the news, they always want to announce these great agreements where everybody will, hug each other. It rarely happens. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you, sir. Profesore Zijade Beciroviću, zamolio bih vas da vi iz vaše perspektive ocenite situaciju ili situacije u regionu, molim vas.
Hvala na pozivu. Hvala organizatoru, gospodinu Simeonu Comocosu, na odlično organiziranom događaju, pogotovo što ovo nije jedini događaj, znači to je poznat Delphi Economic Forum, znači on je postao jedan prepoznatljiv brend i pogotovo što ovdje suočava ljude sa različitim pogledima na određena pitanja. Mislim da te razlike stvaraju i nove kvalitete i drago mi je da su pozvani mladi ljudi, znači da je omladina sa nama, studenti. Ja sam izabrao da pričam na srpskom jeziku iz razloga što ja dolazim iz Slovenije i tamo je školski raspust, a moji supruzini djeci srpski jezik nije maternji, a kamoli ćirilica. I mi smo ovih dana iskoristili da posjetimo od Oplenca, od Orašca, drugih dijelova Srbije i jezik ide dobro i supruzi i djeci, ali ćirilica, boga mi, teško, ali mislim da će polako i to ići, tako da malo napravimo ove turističke promocije Srbije, pošto je forum prilika da se zaista istaknu pozitivne strane, odnosno pozitivne stvari koje su postignute, pogotovo što Srbija stoji čvrsto na evropskom putu i, što je još važnije za region, strateško partnerstvo sa Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama i sporazum energetski koji je nedavno potpisan. Ja znamo da ni Evropske unije ne bi bilo bez Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, kao što ne vidim da članstva država Zapadnog Balkana može biti bez snažne podrške Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i mogu slobodno reći da imam utisak da Sjedinjene Američke Države više podržavaju put ovih zemalja u Evropsku uniju Zapadnog Balkana, znači uključujući i Srbiju, neko pojedine zemlje članice Evropske unije. I pošto je ovo ekonomski forum, mislim da je dobro da je ekonomski forum, jer imamo dosta politika i političara opšte prakse i o tome se svakodnevno priča na dnevnoj osnovi. Znači, ovdje je forum koji donosi dodanu vrijednost ne samo u ekonomiji, nego u različitim aspektima. Ja bih postavio pitanje, evo, 29 godina je od tragičnih sukoba na području bivše Jugoslavije. To je negdje, kad prevedemo u jezik posle Drugog svjetskog rata, to je negdje 1974. godina. Tada je Evropa blistala, znači obnovljena, a prije toga još 20 godina su radnici iz bivše Jugoslavije koji su ratovali sa Trećim rajhom išli slobodno da rade u Njemačku. Nažalost, mi imamo ovdje pokazatelje koji pokazuju da ipak ekonomska obnova, ekonomski prosperitet ni izbliza ne odgovara okolnostima koje su nam sada dostupne. Znači, živimo u globalizaciji. Nije isto bilo 45. i 6. znači, ekonomija svijeta, nije bilo globalizacije ili je bio početak ili u nekom blagom obliku je počela globalizacija i naravno sve ove resurse koje imamo na raspolaganju. I naravno postavlja se pitanje gdje je sada Zapadni Balkan 29 godina posle. Mislim da, evo opet da malo uzmem simboliku Srbije, Srbija će uskoro dobiti i svog kardinala, mislim kardinal Nemet prvi put u istoriji Srbije, Rimokatoličke crkve. I zašto govorim to? Zato što bi upotrijebio izraz konklava. Znači, ovdje je potrebna jedna konklava širih društvenih aktera i u Srbiji i u regioni da prevaziđemo postojeću situaciju. Mi znamo tačno šta je, kakva je bila čija uloga u svim ovim proteklim zbivanjima, ali ne smijemo biti zarobljenici svih tih zbivanja. To su zaista znači, teške stvari, moram pokazati satisfakciju ljudima koji su izgubili živote, znači porodicama, stradalima, ali ne možemo živjeti u tom vremenu. Mi, nažalost, živimo dobrim dijelom još uvijek u tom vremenu i zato sam volio da je ovdje bila i ambasadorica Njemačke koja je bila najavljena da u stvari podijelimo i ta njemačka iskustva, kako se ona adekvatno suočila sa prošlošću. Mi se suočavamo sa prošlošću na jedan unilateralan, jednostran način, vidimo samo sebe, a ne vidimo druge. A da biste vidjeli sebe u pravom značenju te riječi, morate pogledati drugu stranu. A mi to svjesno i sistemski, mogu slobodno reći, izbjegavamo. I zato govorim o konklavi, da je to vrlo važno, kao što je važna i meka moć. Mi vrlo često govorimo o tvrdoj i mekoj moći. Evo, simbol tvrde moći su Sjedinjene Američke Države, ali su simbol istovremeno i meke moći. Meka moć je da vi mene priznate ovako kakav jesam i ja vas. I to nas ništa ne košta, znači jedna obična razmjena, ali svima će biti bolje. Mi nismo spremni ni na taj korak. Znači, postoji određeni problem ili kod nas, ili kod vas, ili kod oboje, ili odnosno kod šire društvene zajednice. Kad sam studirao ekonomiju, nas učili da tržište sve regulira. Nažalost, ili na sreću, ne regulira sve tržište i to su pokazale i prethodne krize. Znači, ne samo finansijska, ekonomska kriza, korona kriza, kao što znamo da civilno društvo opravdava jednu svoju ulogu u samom regionu. Zašto to povezujem? Iz razloga što, znači, u svakom mozaiku društvenom svaka kockica ima smisao. I mi ili ne imamo dovoljno kockica ili su privilegirane samo određene kockice. I zato naglašavam šta znači ta meka moć. Čak i one zemlje koje su najmoćnije u tvrdoj moći koriste tu svoju meku moć. I civilno društvo je jedna ta velika snaga koja se može iskoristiti. Pogotovo u segmentu da stalno dišemo za vratom političarima. Znači, i kad su dobri, ne smijemo im priznati da su dobri, jer mislim da mogu uvijek više uraditi za svoje zajednice. I naravno, svijet nije crno-bijel. Znači, nigdje nije, znači, ni kada gledamo ni globalno, ni na sva ova dešavanja u regionu, ali oni narodi, one države koje su spremne da se suoče sa prošlošću na adekvatan način, one mogu napredovati. I nije slučajno se insistira suočavanje s prošlošću. Zar mislite da bi Savezna Republika Njemačka bila to što jeste da se nije na adekvatan način, mada i kritičari unutar Njemačke smatraju da je to moglo biti još bolje i vjerovatno jeste. Evo kada pogledamo recimo koliko je potrošeno novca poreskih obveznika Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, Evropske unije, pošto Evropska unija možda i najviše daje sredstava, kada bi to dali biznismenima, poslovnim ljudima u regionu, oni bi napravili čudo. Nažalost, ogromna sredstva su poreskih obveznika potrošena, ali rezultat nije adekvatan uloženim sredstvima i pošto su ovdje menadžeri, ekonomisti, znači nešto se mora promijeniti da imamo bolju i ekonomičnost i rentabilnost, ali i produktivnost, barem u ovom društvenom našem djelovanju. I dođemo do situacije institucija. Znači, ove države funkcioniraju manje više kao društva jednog lica. To se pokazalo pogubno i za društva, i za države, i u krajnjoj instanci i za ta jedna lica. Ovdje je važno stvarati institucije. Možda najbolji primjer je Italija. Tamo se često mijenjaju vlade, ali institucije, middle management, on funkcioniše. I znači, ako gradimo institucije, država će funkcionisati bez obzira na određene političke stabilnosti. Mi ipak moramo znati da su ova društva na području bivše Jugoslavije u stvari u nekom političkom pubertetu. Nažalost, taj pubertet trajao više od 30 godina, a zna se otprilike kad se završi i koliko traje taj pubertet kod osobe, ali ovaj politički pubertet, nažalost, stalno doživljava jednu kulminaciju i kada mislimo da je dosegao najvišu tačku, nažalost, on i dalje ide naprijed i to nije dobro za sva ova društva. Iako se političke elite formalno zalažu za članstvo u Evropskoj uniji, nažalost, napravi jedan korak naprijed, 3 koraka nazad. Zašto? Pa zato što približavanje Evropskoj uniji njih eliminira sa političke scene. Oni sa takvim stavovima, sa takvim backgroundom, sa takvom retorikom nemaju tražiti u jednoj prestižnoj asocijaciji, integraciji civiliziranih država i naroda. Ne kažem da mi nismo ovdje civilizirani, ali nećete me pogrešno shvatiti. I naravno, zašto bi oni radili sami protiv sebe? Mislim da je u svakom slučaju budućnost regiona euroatlantska perspektiva, pa čak i Srbije, iako se to izbjegava u Srbiji često reći, ali malo kada se podsjetimo na istoriju, nosioci jugoslovenske ideje bila je Hrvati. Srbi su zadnji ušli u bivšu zajedničku državu Jugoslaviju, zadnji su izašli. Tako da ako gledamo malo analogiju i neke paralele povlačimo, ja sam duboko uvjeren da će na kraju i Srbija postati članica NATO-a. Ide sporo, možda to izgleda futuristički, ali mislim na kraju krajeva, jer bi time čak i oni koji zagovaraju neke ideje koje su dosta kritički u regionu prihvaćaju iz Beograda, svi bi živjeli u jednom ustavno-pravnom aranžmanu, to bi bila Evropska unija, to bi bio NATO i svako bi živio u svom kulturnom korpusu. Znači, nikakvih više ne bi. Time bi se ostvarili, znači, ciljevi, svi mogući ciljevi i etničkih zajednica, ali i država u ovom samom regionu. Naravno da je za članstvo u Evropskoj uniji važna politička volja. Ja ću vas podsjetiti, 2004. godine primljeno je 10 država grupno. Znači, to je jedna istorijska činjenica da je moguć grupan prijem. Čak je još jedna druga istorijska činjenica koja se ne tako često o njoj govori. Primljeno je čak 9,5 država. Primljena je polovina Kipra. Znači, i to ako postoji politička volja može doći do nje. Kao što je rekao kolega na jednom od prethodnih panela, ulazak Bugarske i Rumunije bio je po snažnu podršku Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, pošto je glavni partner Sjedinjenih Američkih Država u Europskom parlamentu, Europska narodna partija, Europska narodna stranka, European People Party, tako da i to je ostvareno. Tako ne govorim slučajno zašto je važna ovdje podrška Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, ne zato što je ambasador tu, nego zato da se i očuva Europska unija, ali da bi i mi, odnosno zemlje Zapadnog Balkana, postale njene punopravne članice. Na kraju krajeva tu se radi najviše 16 miliona ljudi, tako da to čak ne predstavlja ni polovinu stanovništva Poljske, s tim da imamo 5 zemalja koje su vrlo slične, znači da su živjeli u istom ustavno-pravnom aranžmanu, tako da se one vrlo lako mogu prilagoditi članstvu u Evropskoj uniji. I imamo Albaniju, mislim da bi to bio zaista najveće dostignuće i Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i Evropske unije ako žele trajan mir i dugoročnu stabilnost na Zapadnom Balkanu. I kada pogledamo, evo bilo ovdje raznih inicijativa, od Otvorenog Balkana, od Berlinskog procesa, skoro 40 regionalnih inicijativa postoji. Ja bih zamolio ambasadora da iskoristi svoj autoritet i naše prijatelje unutar Evropske unije. Nama je potrebna samo jedna inicijativa, a to je inicijativa da ove države u skorašnje vrijeme postanu punopravne članice Evropske unije. Da li će do toga doći, zavisi i od nove finansijske perspektive od 2028. do 2025. pošto na 7 godina Evropska unija, 35. 2035. Ako bude 28. 2020 do 35. Znači, ako u toj finansijskoj perspektivi budu osigurana sredstva za proširenje će biti. Ukoliko tih sredstava ne bude, znači, nemamo se čemu onda nadati.
Hvala lepo.
I želim samo još jednu rečenicu. Sjedinjena Amerika je zemlja šansi, a ljudi na Balkanu trebaju samo šansu, ali ne mislim ovu preko kladionica da dobijaju šanse kao što to obično se radi, jer ljudi na ovim prostorima su vrijedni, marljivi i spremni su, improvizirajući i smjelošću svojom, da mnogo toga naprave brže možda nego to što uradili klasični zapadni Evropljani. Znači, samo dajmo šansu ovim ljudima, ja gledam tu mlade ljude, moje kolege studente, znači, moguće je to sve napraviti. Samo šansa.
Hvala puno. Kad ste rekli 9,5, ja rekao 9,5 nedelja, Kim Basinger i Miki Rourke, a vi kažete 9,5 država. Što je odličan point. Odličan point jer znači da i država koja nema do kraja definisanu teritoriju je ušla u Evropsku uniju. A u jednom paketu 10 država. Pa šta će više? Znači, moguće je kad se hoće i kad se ima vizija. Very good point. Hvala vam puno, profesore. Sada ću zamoliti gospodina Zorana Tadića, austrijskog konzula u Srbiji i privrednika da nam kaže kakva su vaša iskustva u ulaganju u Srbiji, kako vidite uopšte odnose u regionu u smislu prijema investicija, kako vi imate različite iskustva ulaganja u raznim zemljama regiona i kako je vaše iskustvo kada uporedite te naše države regiona kao domaćine investicija?
Pa ja bih pre svega se evo nadovezao na izlaganje mog uvaženog supaneliste i ta rečenica koju on izgovorio, da me ne shvate pogrešno, ali ja nekako dajem sebi autoritet i, odnosno da kažem, licencu da sam ja prvi izgovorio u Sarajevu 2007. godine na jednom panelu u Prirodnoj komori Federacije, gde smo se upravo pozvali koji je period protekao od završetka Drugog svjetskog rata i gde su Francuska i Nemačka bila tad, a gde smo sad, evo mi, 35 godina kasnije. I Amerikanci, pošto je američki ambasador sa nami, imaju jednu jako dobru i pragmatičnu izjavu. Oni kažu, ovo nije problem, ovo je opportunity for solution. I ja bih rekao da je ono u čemu se mi sad trenutno nalazimo upravo jedan veliki opportunity za solution, koji će biti ne samo politički, ne samo ekonomski, nego i bezbedonosni. Ekonomisti uvek pronalaze jednostavniji zajednički jezik nego što to rade političari, a pogotovo nego što to uspevaju da nađu pravnici. Neki bi rekli da se pravnici uvek tu nađu da zakomplikuju stvari, ali svi znamo da komplikovane situacije zahtevaju trajna rešenja i otuda su naravno i pravnici neophodni u tom procesu, ali bih rekao da su ljudi iz privrede oni koji prvi otpočinju, koji prvi započinju i koji na neki način trasiraju put budućeg razvoja i puta stabilizacije kako regiona, tako i da kažem šire teritorije. Kao priprema za ovaj sastanak sakupio sam neke podatke u smislu kako je to Srbija imala ekonomsku razmenu sa regionom. Pa se vidi u principu da negde već od 2014. na ovamo je to uvek uzlazni trend. I to je jedan od bitnih pokazatelja na koji način naša država gradi odnose sa regionom, ne samo što se tiče uvoza, nego što se tiče izvoza, jer to je bitno, što bi rekli ljudi sa berze, naš posao je kupovina i prodaja. Ako je jedno od ta dva ne funkcioniše, da kažemo, nema tog nekog balansa. Razne su inicijative ovde stvarane od, da kažemo, CEFTE, od Open Balkana, i te inicijative su naravno ključne da bi se na mikronivou regioni pomirili, da bi se regioni povezali, i postavljeno ovde pitanje šta je alternativa miru, šta je alternativa ekonomskoj saradnji i šta je alternativa nekoj stabilizaciji. Naravno, alternativa je ono što je nas, nažalost, zateklo u ovom regionu između 1991. i 1995. godine, to je sukob koji nas je sve unazadio. Mi možemo sa raznih aspekata to da sagledamo zašto je to bilo, kako je bilo, ali činjenica je nepobitna da se to dogodilo i da je to uticalo na razvoj ekonomski i bilo kakav drugi kulturni ovog regiona. I sada postoje razni pokazatelji kako se to može utvrditi, a ja, obzirom da sam ovde u dvostrukoj ulozi i vlasnika kompanije Neofyton koja radi u kompletnom regionu i kao počasni konzul Republike Austrije u Srbiji za teritoriju Vojvodine, ja sam na neki način malo analizirao podatke gde je bila bivša Jugoslavija u smislu GDP-a u američkim dolarima 1980. godine i gde je bila Austrija. Austrija koja je u tom periodu imala negde oko 7 miliona stanovnika, Jugoslavija koja je imala 22 miliona stanovnika, imali su skoro sličan nivo GDP-a. Austrija imala 78 milijardi, a bivša Jugoslavija imala 70 milijardi u tom trenutku. I naravno sad treba da vidimo gde se te teritorije nalaze na današnji dan, ili 2023. godine. Pa Austrija je na nekih 516-520 milijardi. Preračunano kad se uključi inflacija, 70 milijardi Austrije iz 1980. godine je negde oko 230-240 milijardi današnjih dolara. A GDP Jugoslavije, da kažem nešto manji, je opet da kažemo 220 milijardi. Zbirno, kompletan GDP sabrani na današnji dan svih republika bivše Jugoslavije je negde oko 230 milijardi. Evo tu se krije direktan ekonomski pokazatelj koliki je bio direktan ekonomski trošak rata. Mi se faktički nismo pomakli sa mesta. Slovenija koja je daleko ispred ostatka bivše Jugoslavije, Hrvatska koja je naravno druga u tom razvoju, obzirom da su po tom redosledu i bile primane u Evropsku uniju, što verovatno nije ni slučajno, jer su bile, da kažemo, najstabilnije u smislu ekonomskom i najdalje odmakle u smislu demokratičnosti i ostalih, da kažemo, kriterijuma za prijem u Evropsku uniju, ali kako god bilo, taj pokazatelj, Austrija duplirala bukvalno svoj GDP u odnosu na 1980. a bivša Jugoslavija tapka u istom mestu, je direktan dokaz zašto su mir, stabilnost i razumevanje ključni element za razvoj bilo kojeg regiona, pa naravno tako i našeg. Što se tiče integracija, ja mogu da kažem da je Vojvodina jedan dobar primer zašto je međusobno razumevanje ljudi koji žive na određenoj teritoriji ključno za razvoj tog regiona. Naravno da svi imamo sad te moderne izraze inkluzija, uključivanje, ravnopravnost i tako dalje, i to je sve tako moderno i interesantno, ali kad se malo zadubite, shvatite da ljudi najčešće niti razumeju zašto je to bitno, niti to previše uzimaju u obzir. A evo Vojvodina koja manje više u svom tom obliku postoji od nekih 1600. godine, kada je u 16. i 17. vekom voljom Austrijskog carstva Srbima bilo dozvoljeno da se dosele iz teritorije tadašnje Osmanske imperije i doprinesu razvoju ne samo austrijskog društva i austrijske carevine, nego i sačuvanju kulturnog identiteta srpskog naroda koji je u tom trenutku jednostavno bio bez svoje države, pošto je bio, da kažemo, okupiran od strane Otomanske imperije. Kako god bilo, region koji se kreirao od različitih naroda jednostavno pokazao da apsolutno može da se vrlo brzo i složno razvija. Ja bih rekao da je i bivša Jugoslavija bila jedan odličan primer kako različiti narodi ili narodi vrlo sličnog porekla uspevaju da za jedno kratko vreme od 45. do 90. godine imaju jedan zaista nezabeležen nivo razvoja kada postoji politička volja i kad postoji, da kažemo, volja na međunarodnog faktora da se sve to, da kažemo, na takav način i dogodi. Vezano da li je bolje da to budu evropske integracije, da li je to bolje da budu euroatlantske, da li treba da bude NATO ili ne, svako ima, da kažemo, neku svoju putanju. Evo, Austrija je dobar primer da država može da bude i neutralna, a da bude deo Europske unije i da bude jedna od najrazvijenijih zemalja Evrope. Naravno da bi to, što kažu, ako se vrši jedna kompletna, da kažemo, konsolidacija ili što bi rekla bivša ministrica inostranih poslova Hrvatske, proširenje Evropske unije na Zapadni Balkan, to u stvari nije proširenje, to je konsolidacija, obzirom da se Zapadni Balkan, kao što je rekao ambasador Mađarske, nalazi u sredini kao neka vrsta bele fleke. Naravno da ukoliko postoji politička volja i da kažemo se okolnosti, da kažemo, poklopile, to se može relativno brzo dogoditi. Ja bih se još jedanput složio sa mojim uvaženim sagovornikom vezano za uticaj Amerike i na brzinu integracije Zapadnog Balkana. Verovatno bi, naravno, uz pomoć Amerike i koliko se to vidi, bi se ta integracija mogla još brže dogoditi, ali vezano za ekonomiju...
Samo molim vas da je polako privodite kraj vašeg.
Da. Vezano za ekonomiju i vezano za kulturu, želim samo da kažem da su kako i Austrija, tako i Amerika upravo tokom perioda istorije se razvijale najbrže kada su imali pravi, da kažem, dolaz kvalitetne radne snage koja je omogućavala da se jednostavno te ekonomije na pravi način integrišu. I evo samo kao kratka završna rečenica, pre 2 nedelje sam imao prilike da budem deo srpske delegacije na Univerzitetu Kolumbija, gde se proslavljalo 100 godina kako je Mihajlo Pupin dobio Pulitzerovu nagradu. Taj čovek iz jednog malog sela u Srbiji je uspeo da za 4 godine završi Kolumbiju, nakon toga se vrati u Evropu, doktorira i bude kasnije profesor na Kolumbiji i postane deo ne samo ljudi koji su osnovali NASA-u, koji su radili na Manhattan projektu, nego da jedna od najvećih zgrada na Kolumbiji univerzitetu nosi njegovo ime. To je jedan dobar primer kako jednostavno se može pojedinac iz ove teritorije, da kažemo, doprineti stranoj zemlji, a kasnije i pomoći sopstvenoj zemlji u daljem razvoju.
I will just use the inspiration, Mr. Ambassador, about trust and tone, 2 words that you have mentioned. And I think these words are essential for the future of nations. And those 2 words have determined the history of nations. Those governments that have destroyed the notion of trust in human ideals, such as democracy, rule of law, free press, those governments who have compromised in the minds of their people the possibility that anywhere in the world democracy is possible, or the rule of law is possible, or that freedom is possible. They have betrayed trust deliberately. They have betrayed trust deliberately and enslaved their people. And this begins with the Russian Bolshevik Revolution. That's the organized effort, first historic organized effort in the modern world, when everything became possible because nothing is true. And the way to achieve it is fundamentalize complete detachment from the notion of reality, saying whatever is conducive to my solidification of absolute power. So restoring trust in the fundamental values of social organization into the Serbian society and other societies which went through communism is the necessary precondition for a happy future of this country. Mrs. Lazarevic, will you please close this session? We have 1.5 minutes left.
Well, first of all, I have a little question, actually. Since you mentioned, actually, you were quoting Ambassador Hill, the two words trust, tone, yes, I agree with you. But however, just making the reference to actually the revolution, the revolution in the Russian Empire, and then the later communist period, and mentioning kind of having the dominant role of the leaders, and do you have any reference to the nowadays period, if I'm correct, or you just mentioned the Russia? Because it was just, somehow I didn't get fully the point. From your perspective of pro-democratic...
I will tell you clearly, yes.
Yes, yes.
We
should be actually very straightforward and maybe a bit overall.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The Russian Revolution detached society from God, from the transcendental aspects of the state. And the state itself has become a divinity. And power of the state, the ultimate aim. And that has brought, that was inspiration for fascism, for Nazism afterwards, also.
That's true.
That's what I think, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But, however, it's not, I mean, you have to look back into the history, even before the Russian Revolution, actually. How some people actually react, and do you really need to have the leader? Do you need to have somebody really with a vision, actually, to be the force actually taking the country into the future? I would not actually mix the two with ideology, actually, about the communistic state, because I did live in the communist state for a very long time.
We all did, yeah.
We still very much remember, actually, how it functions. And we are right now building something which is not a communist society. At least from my perspective, I don't see, something, to be compared between the current Serbia, if you had that in mind, with a post-Russian period, actually, the new Soviet period. So that's...
You know, I was teaching at the Academy for Judges and Prosecutors, and I was teaching at the Belgrade Law School. And I have asked my students at the Belgrade Law School 20 years ago, and a year ago, I asked the future judges, young men and women who will become judges in the next 1 or 2 years. I asked them, do you believe in the rule of law in Serbia? And they have just acidly, laughed. And then I asked them, okay, another question. Do you believe in the rule of law anywhere? Does it exist anywhere in the world? And they again acidly laughed. And that cynicism, that disbelief in the fundamental ideas of a free society among young lawyers in their late 20s is a huge problem of this society and other societies who went through communism. The cynicism which dictatorship instills in societies is very hard to clean out. Look at Eastern Germany. They have a complete different reaction to the events in Ukraine than do Western Germans. And that is a direct lineage to their communist past. That is what I was mentioning. That's what I meant to say. Yes.
Can I just give the final little remarks? I believe that for the prosperity of this region, actually, the people living in the Western Balkans actually should be taking care of their future. Of course, with the support of the partners, with the support of the countries. We mentioned the EU, our common path. We mentioned the US. We have a number of partners actually that really share our aspiration, and they see us actually belonging to the European family. But however, I believe that the countries, our people, should be actually those deciding upon our future. And they have to have the dreams, and they have to, I mean, those dreams sooner or later come true. And even the decision when they vote, actually, and whom they are choosing, actually, is also a matter, actually, of the freedom. I'm free to choose whom I consider to be actually the leader of my country and where we are heading. So it is, again, about the freedom, about where we want to head. But yes, definitely, the Western Balkans have the common future. Most of us, I hope, are actually aware of that. Some maybe not yet, but they will be, because this is just how the things function. We do naturally belong to Europe, and we need to do a lot. We need actually to make really very concrete efforts in order to catch up. Actually, something that previous speakers mentioned, yes, ex-Yugoslav republics, including Serbia. We enter into our transition 1 decade later, and we're still trying actually to catch up.
True.
And this was not my fault. This was not your fault, actually. It just happened, actually. So it is really something. And from that position, we managed to start catching up, and we are doing well. However, it's still a lot of work to be done, but I believe that what has been demonstrated in the past couple of years, we are on the right track, and we really have a full confidence into the cooperation in real terms, not the words, the deeds, actually, with the partners in the region, because only prosperous Western Balkans actually can be a constructive part of the European Union and the Europe as a continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much with these beautiful words. I thank you, dear panelists, for your contributions, and I want to greet Minister Vesic also, who has just arrived.